All right, if you've ever felt like you're maybe meant for more, maybe there's another level that you want to get to and you're not quite sure how to get there, or maybe you've stepped into leadership, maybe you've worked under someone else, and maybe you've had those uncomfortable, growth filled moments where transformation doesn't feel easy. This show might be for you. Welcome to the Possibility Perspective with me, Jess. Authentic, bold, and challenging conversations. You'll hear stories from me, conversations with peers, and interviews with experts on a variety of topics, all with different perspectives. Now, let's get started. Today, I'm talking to Mike Amato, and he's an executive coach, consultant, speaker, author, and he helps people and organizations exceed their own expectations, embracing the art of, my favorite word, transformation. And so we're going to just go right into it, and I'm going to have Mike share a little bit about his journey because, boy, this is a story. This is something that got him to executive coaching, and maybe not in the typical linear route to get here. So, Mike, welcome to the show. Yeah, I'm excited about this. And so I was hoping we could just start because we're going to get into some juicy stuff, but can we start with you laying the kind of groundwork foundation of the journey to this point?
Well, I will. It's a section that I call, why should anybody believe in me? So let's start with that. Look, you raised some really good questions at the beginning about, if you've ever been stuck or you've been have a bad boss or bad culture, or you just want to do more. So it's called change. And so, how do I know about change? Well, I can tell you that I graduated from Seattle University and got a job temporarily, $7.50 an hour at Washington Mutual Bank in Seattle. And it was supposed to be for 3 months, just answering the phone. They're trying to set up a first telephone banking unit, blah, blah, blah. And 24 years later, I was the president of the retail bank. And so what had happened is right guy, right company, right time. But I had to grow my career and evolve in what I was doing because I really wanted to make a big impact on the organization because I loved it. And I wanted to make sure that I could make the biggest impact possible. And by becoming president, I could obviously have a bigger impact. As the values started to shift, so one of the things about transformations and challenges are core values. It's really important to be in alignment with who we are. And what happened is the values shifted. And they didn't say we're going to shift the values. They didn't say we're going to make a conscious pivot away from the values we've had that got us here. I mean, we started when I was there, it was like a $3 billion bank with 54 branches. When I left, we were a $156 billion bank with 2,500 branches all around the country, so the sixth biggest bank. So the values that really fed our culture that got us there, all of a sudden they started shifting and pivoting, and specifically around subprime lending. And I did not want my division to do subprime lending, and so ultimately I said, "That's it, I'm going to leave." And I left, and I was recruited to Barclays Global Retail Bank. So moved to London and had quite an adventure when I first got there. I'll make this quick, but I was the head of the entire UK, the branch network, all the products, all the channels, and a couple of the segments from wealth to personal customers to small business. And what happened was the BBC had recorded a bunch of our training sessions, performance review sessions, and put us on a show called Whistleblower one Sunday night and said, Barclays is the bank that trains people to missell. And so it was a big scandal. Now I had just arrived there and I'm thinking, man, I'm going to be on a plane back to the US in about one or 2 days, pardon me. And, but I was able to convince the board this wasn't about sacrificial lambs or who needs to go. The issue was we could see that people behaved the way we were encouraging them to behave. Now, we didn't like it, but it was leadership's responsibility for setting the tone. And all they did was reflect the tone that we set. So I convinced the board that, hey, you know what? This is a cultural issue. Let me reset the culture. My group was 30,000 people, and we had to reset it. So quickly, employee engagement is a really important metric. You measure, how healthy is your ecosystem. And it was 64%. Now, global high performing norm was 86%. And this was 64% with 30,000 people. We launched a transformation program, And we ended up with employee engagement scores 15 months later, which everybody told me you can't change culture for 10 years. Well, it was 15 months later, we had a 92%. So we're the top of any bank in the world. So I discovered that journey in transforming the organization with a smart team of people around me, we were able to transform the corporation. And that encouraged me to say that same framework works for one person that worked for 30,000 people. That's my story.
So you proved wrong one of the things that I've heard a lot, and that's changing culture. You can't change culture. Once it's toxic, it's like you got to cut the snake off. You got to, clean house. You got to do the thing and you got to start fresh. So why? Why did you have that mindset that you could change it?
That's a great question. It's got so many dimensions to it. Mindset was a word you used. You're never wrong. So if you don't think you can change the culture and you've got to fire everybody to bring in new people, then you must be right. Right. So if you don't think you can do it, you'll be right. But if you think you can do it, almost always you can be right. But it's deeper than that. So it's not just if you think you can do it, you can do anything. It's deeper than that. And what I was lucky to grow up in a culture at Washington Mutual that told me it's possible. So I had this really strong belief and attachment to what it could be like. But the key component there, just like when I left Washington Mutual, key component was values. Values is what's get us up in the morning. What do we stand for? What are our core principles? And they've got to be in alignment with where you work. If they're not, you got a big issue, and you do need to change companies, or the leadership needs to change the organization. But if you can set the right values and have everybody align themselves to the values and the purpose of why we're doing this, you can get this thing I call discretionary energy. And that means people want to versus have to. When that change is made, and I'll tell you what, it's magical when it happens. When it clicks, it's just magical because everybody's now engaged in giving more than they used to give because they want to do it. Well, what happens is culture change then follows that. You've changed the ecosystem, and it starts with leadership and belief.
Okay, so okay, yes, leadership belief. So let me paint a picture scenario for you because I'm sure there's somebody watching this or listening to this that is experiencing, let's for lack of a better word, toxic culture right now. And they might be at the leadership level, they might be at the mid level, they might be at the like they're the bank teller level, right? Or, insert that for whatever industry you're in. And so, let's speak to each one of those people. If they're feeling that, what's their part in that, right? Meaning, like, leadership feels like, okay, we feel like we have great values, we have great value systems, but yet, culture sucks. It's in the tank. So let's speak to them at the top first. Like, what's one thing or two things you would say to them to say, okay, well, here's what we need to look at, or here's what we need to do, if you were coaching them?
Okay, if I was coaching them, I would say, just tell me your values and tell me your personal values. Let's see how well they align with the organizational values. And then I would ask to see their communications. I want to see their campaigns. I want to see how they talk to their teams. I want to see how they make presentations. And what I'm looking for is a toxic culture is inauthentic. The word hypocritical comes to mind. But it's when people are at the heart of everything we do, but really making money is at the heart of everything we do, and that's all of our activity. But we'll talk about people when we're on the stage for the last 15 minutes of an all-day conference on how much money we need to make. We'll talk about people and how important. We'll thank everybody for their hard work. That's inauthenticity, and that is the core, the major driver of toxic cultures. So my first thing I would coach is to say, let's understand your values, and look, if the values that you want to express are not the values your organization has adopted, please go through a conscious program to change the values. People may leave, they may not agree with them, but at least you're being authentic, and your greatest chance of expressing your leadership power, I don't mean power by control, I mean power by influence, is when you're in authentic alignment with your values. So that's what I would tell the leaders. And I would tell them, this can happen. Read my book, The Better Way to Win, and I'll show you how to do it. But there's a way to do it. So that's kind of to the leaders. Would you like me to talk to the other group?
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk to the middle the people like me in the messy middle.
Yeah, messy middle. I love that. You know, the messy middle is messy, and it's messy for a reason. Middle managers have the ability to be conduits. Let's take the vision and let's bring it down to the people that work for you, the entry level or the front line of the organization. Or they have the ability to be shock absorbers and say, you know what, I'm not going to pass this on. I'm going to pass on my own um, information. Now, both can be good and both can be bad. A really good person in the middle can discern when the boss is just railing about something, and you could pivot, spin a little bit and say, here's a direction we need to go to your team, and you can improve on what the boss said. So that time you want to be a shock absorber. Where you don't want to be a shock absorber is when we do get going in a direction, we are going to turn this thing around. You don't want to be a non-believer because now you're going against the flow of the organization where they said they've gone. So you need to discern, do I want to be a conduit, just pass this down, or do I want to be a shock absorber? So it's a very difficult position. And that means that middle managers can be the blockers of progress, or they can be the accelerators. The people that we look to promote are the people who can take the message from the CEO and make it better because they add their personality. They don't change the direction, but they change the way the message is delivered. And that's a leader who you watch in the middle. It says people follow them as opposed to people are managed by them, that they see them almost as a control function. So
Yeah.
messy middle, this is kind of a short version of it, but you've got to help understand how can you change something? How can you move up in the organization so you can start changing those policies or values that you're having a problem with? But if it's really an inauthentic misalignment with what you stand for, I think it's time to explore other alternatives for your career. So it's up, or if it's alignment, but everything's okay, great, stay. But you've got to be willing to say, you know what, I think too much of myself to stay here. And it's why I left Washington Mutual, because I think too much of myself to stay and not be aligned with the values. And I couldn't be a sort of that shock absorber. I couldn't do it any longer. So that's why I left.
Yeah.
Does that help?
It does. It helps a lot. And I want to repeat this back in just so I make sure I'm getting it. And then anyone listening, you can reach out to Mike if you're in one of these positions and you need some help. So, at the top level, it's like leadership, top leadership, values, and you got to walk your talk, basically. I mean, it's like if you say these are your values, then you need to actually action. I'm full of cliches. Actions speak louder than words, right? Like it all has to match. Otherwise, we're inauthentic. And then that's the first problem from the top down, right? Next level, okay, so you're kind of in this messy middle. And, first of all, you have to decide, do I align with these values of this company that are being put down to me? Or, and then can I articulate that? And you're kind of managing in your own way. And okay, and I just use the word managing, but you actually should be leading, right? And that's kind of what you alluded to there. And I want to maybe stop there in my explanation, because can you help us understand the difference between leading and managing?
That's a great point. They're both very important functions. Okay. So a manager is a process. Management is a process. I need to go through this process to manage my team and manage processes, et cetera, et cetera. Leadership's a feeling. When you take Leonard Bernstein, symphony conductor, probably the most famous of all time, at least to my knowledge, he was beloved because of his ability to bring the best out of the symphony. And the crowd could see his energy. They could see his creativity. That's a feeling. He was a leader. A manager, it's important. You need to manage the certain processes, but it doesn't create a feeling other than competency. If you're going to be a leader, you want to get that feeling. And to me, that's the biggest difference of all.
Yeah. And so that person in the middle, you're doing both, because you're managing, you're executing from what the top gives you down to get your team functioning, but to keep them engaged and excited and wanting to do that work and on board with the company mission and the values and all of the bigger picture. That's leadership. Is that
There you go.
okay?
And let's say you are in alignment. Let's say it's a good place to work and you're just trying to say, how can I move up? Because I could do better if I was up there. Well, then you need to show the skills of a person who's a leader. You need to display that. so that you're seen as a candidate for higher responsibility and more responsibility. So when the time comes, you're seen as a high talent, high potential, high performer. Let's go. So that's what a middle manager can do, is to take that direction, as long as it aligns with who we are, take it and make it better. That's what leaders want to see, is somebody who can actually make it better and magnify it. I say, boy, that's the person to keep their eyes on, or keep our eyes on.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do you think you work with people more in like the top level, the middle level, both levels, career changes? Talk to me a little bit about what you see boots on the ground right now that you're working with.
Yeah, I always say I'm an executive coach, and I'd love to coach CEOs and senior leaders in the C-suite, and help them, show them there is a better way to manage your organization. There is a better way to create a high-performing culture where people are engaged. And oh, by the way, all the other metrics in the balanced scorecard will go off the charts. I can show you. So my mind says go there. But I'll tell you, that's not the people I end up coaching. I end up coaching people somewhere in the middle who are saying, I want to do something more. I don't know that I have the skills, or I'm coming across wrong. How can I increase my impact? So that's where I end up coaching, and that speaks to my heart. And I love helping them navigate a world that there's definitely rules, written and unwritten. And how can you crack the code and begin to announce your presence in a whole different way? And so it's that middle manager that I just really love, because bless their hearts, I was there for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you get it. You've been there. And something we talked about offline, and I think it's, very fascinating and interesting. And it's kind of what perked my ears up the first time I met you. And you said, well, yeah, I'm an executive coach and I work with a lot of women. And I went, really? Well, that's fascinating. And so why do you think it is that you end up working with a lot of women in these roles?
Okay, that's a good question. And sorry, listeners, here's the unfiltered truth. My truth. Yeah, let's call it unfiltered truth. Um, I work with people who are ready to change, who are ready to, and they understand I want to grow, and growth is change. And I want move your feet change. Let's go. I get really excited about that. I'm not so excited about somebody who is interested in changing, who says, okay, I want to learn more. And maybe they lean into it, but they don't move their feet. Well, for me, my experience is that tends to be women. I've had men that I've coached. I want to coach them, and it's like, oh, my high school football coach told me that. Oh, yeah, you ought to meet my neighbor. He's an executive coach. It's like, yeah, we're talking about you. We're talking about change. I don't want to know what you know. I want to see if we can discover what you need to know to get to where you're going. In my experience, most women are ready to say, great, just give me the information. I need to see the world in a different way, and I'm ready. Then let's go. And gosh, they do the work, they do their homework. And so it turns out about 95% of my clients, it used to be 98, but now it's about 95%, because I'm working with a couple cool guys right now. But they're ready for change, and they're ready for move their feet, change, let's go, and let's get after it. So there's an intensity that I really, really love.
And, you know, there's a piece to your work that we've also talked about, and I don't, maybe women are more open to this or not. I can't speak. I'm speaking from my perspective as a woman, but we talked a little bit about the duality of, the woo woo mindfulness, energy connection of business and leadership with left brain strategic thinking. And so just to kind of transition to that conversation a little bit, maybe women are a little more tapped into that than some men. Not all men, I don't want a blanket statement, but let's talk about that a little bit too, and how that's incorporated in the coaching that you do.
Ah, thank you. Exactly right. So when I describe what I do, I'll say I'm Mike Amato. I coach senior leaders into having and helping them have a greater impact. And I do it by solving a couple of issues, or a couple of points they need to understand. The first is personal branding. The second is moving from execution to strategy. So we'll come to that later. Personal branding, though, is really important, because we all have an energetic profile that announces our presence. Now, we know this to the negative, Jessica. We know it. Oh, that person got up on the wrong side of the bed. Oh, she's going to find out that karma's a bitch. Oh, we have these things when we can say somebody's having a bad day, but we don't always embrace it to the positive. And I don't mean positive thinking. I'm talking about maximizing what our creative centers create is an energetic profile. And if it's a dim profile, the reflection back to us is not very bright. If, on the other hand, we brighten that profile, if we send in higher energetic, you can call it vibration, but a higher energetic profile, we'll get a very different reflection. So I always start with personal brand, change your projection, change the reflection, and that will change everything in your life. Because if we don't believe we have an impact on the world around us, then nothing's our fault, nothing's down to us, and I don't know why we try. We have to try. We have to have an impact on it. And it starts by increasing that vibration through a creative center. Some people will say, oh, that's woo woo. Okay, that's fine. I don't know why, again, we don't call it woo woo when it's negative, but it is something that's very important. And there's examples in nature of a profile. The tree outside right now, that window right there, it's got energy, okay? My desk does not have energy. Vibration, no vibration. So it's there, it's all around us. And so we've got to maximize that so we are seen in a different way. And you announce that through your energetic profile, and there's a way to change that.
Okay, so this might be a very simplistic example of this, but and I don't remember where I saw this or I heard this, but I have absolutely done it on multiple occasions where I had to go into a meeting that, I wasn't feeling confident. I wasn't feeling, I mean, I was intellectually prepared. I knew all the right things I needed to do and to say, but I felt like, ugh, I'm not ready for this, right? So I stood up and did the like power woman, like superwoman stance, hands on hips and like head back, shoulders back, and just stood like that and breathed. And I saw to do this somewhere that it would literally help you. I think it might be from a TV show. I don't know. But it literally did help me. Like I was taking deep breaths and I was like feeling strong and feeling confident in that stance. And then I went into my meeting and I shifted my energy. Is that, I mean, kind of an example of what you're talking about?
Absolutely. You changed how you feel about yourself. Cat Stevens says the answer lies within, so take a look there now. Well, why don't we take a look there now? And so that's the key. You went inside yourself and you said, I want to project something different. That's when we say we are enough. I am not a fraud. I should be here. I belong in this room and I have all the information and knowledge, which, by the way, a lot of the women that I coach are the smartest people I've ever met. They have all the information and we just have to create that feeling because, gosh, that insecurity that we're something inside of us is telling us we're not enough, or, yeah, but remember last time you went to a meeting and they didn't like what you said, or, yeah, but you didn't know about that. And are you sure you know everything enough? This little voice inside our head does that. And you put all that, you silence it all and said, I am big enough for this room. And that's a wonderful thing to do. It's what I do anytime I make a keynote speech. I literally walk around the room so I can feel where the walls are. I want to know where the back row is, and I want to grow to the energetic, to the profile, to the size of the room, and that's what you did.
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing how it shifts you like that. I mean, just that self-talk, that confidence, that literal posture just made a difference. And so that's when we're talking about, the energetics of who we are and our personal brand and what we want to put out there. We want to exude that confidence we know we should have, I guess. And so you're working with people on that. And then you're working with people on, okay, now what like strategy, things do we need to implement in your specific situation to get you from here to where you want to be? Correct?
Okay. Yes, absolutely. Um, so what you just described was a process of understanding yourself and accepting yourself. Insecurity. So a lot of people say, I need to hire a coach because I could be better at this, or this, and a very, very crude way of looking at it, but it's so simple. Jessica, if you're 100% of something, think of a pie chart, and you're 94% goodness, and your 6% could be betterness, everybody wants you to focus on the 6% could be betterness. Let's bolster up those skills. But I will tell you what's holding you back is actually focusing on what you're not very good at. It only feeds insecurity. So I'd rather see you go from, and we call it a strength-based approach, go from 94% goodness to 96% goodness. You've consumed 2% of the could be betterness, but you're putting your energy and your focus where they should go. So they go together. Your energy goes, your focus goes, and put on what you're better at. And that creates a whole different view of who you are and a whole different level of confidence. Now you're seen differently. Now, over here is the other part we're talking about is now, how do I change how I'm perceived? I want people to hear me differently. And women in particular are raised to achieve high grades, you get high praise. My project's done under budget, on time, excellent work. We covered everything. And you get rewarded by getting a pat on the head and say, great, keep up the good work. Gosh, we'd be lost without you. But that's not how to get promoted. It's not execution. You need that. It's a foundation, but it's a shift to strategic contributor. And when I say strategy, I think everybody thinks they're strategic. What I mean by strategic thinking is to say, if I was a CEO, how should I think like a CEO? And so a lot of our work, when I'm working with the clients, is to say, here's what the CEO is worried about. They are Leonard Bernstein on stage conducting an orchestra. You're one instrument. And so how do you understand what their issues are? And now you can start coming across in a more strategic way. You work more collaboratively with your peer group. You understand all the stakeholders and the balance of everything. And now you're starting to speak strategically and you're heard differently. It's a massive change from look how hard I work. Look, I'm sorry to say this, but it's a big thing. Good girlitis. Look what a good girl I am. Nonsense. You're a strategic leader, an impactful leader. And so let's start thinking strategically like a CEO.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So, and I just want to say this too, because there's people listening to this that understand the concept of getting a coach, right? There's people that understand that concept. They understand invest in yourself. You need to grow, and they understand that that's different than therapy. So I want to talk to the people that this might be a new concept for them. Let's talk to them a little bit about what coaching is, what coaching isn't versus therapy, and why. Because and again, to me, this just seems so obvious. Like, I can't do this on my own. I need somebody to help me figure this stuff out. And but let's talk. Can you talk to that a little bit for those people that have not really ever considered coaching before?
Yeah, it's a big deal because we can't see our own blind spots. I can tell you, I cannot coach myself to the degree that I can coach other people. You can't see the label from the inside of the jar, is another old saying, but it's a good saying. So the reason you get a coach is to get a perspective from somebody else. Now, what I like to do is mix. I call it coach mentor, because a coach will have they get a certification, and there's a very strict regime around how did you come to that conclusion? What were your options? Could you have thought about that differently? Which way? And so it's very helping the person understand, empowering them to make up, grow their capabilities to understand how to deal with different situations. A mentor can say, I've been there, and I'll tell you what, my job was at risk, and I went left, and I would suggest you go right because it can be. So it's not so much advice, but it is a little bit of wisdom that can say, as you're thinking about these things, I'm going to coach you, but I can now step out and mentor a little bit. So first understand the value of the person you're speaking to. What exactly do you need? And then build trust that they're the one that can help you with it. But a lot of people don't choose coaches because either they're not aware that they could use a coach. Tiger Woods had 9 swing coaches in his career. Tiger Woods, the greatest golfer in the history of golf, had 9 coaches. Why? Because he knew he couldn't do it himself. He needed somebody to help him. A lot of women in business need an advocate. That's what they're looking for. And that's where the mentor can come in and say, I'm your advocate. I'm your biggest fan. Let's go and let's make this thing happen. So you need to have that trust and faith and understanding that your coach or mentor is going to actually help you by supporting you and certainly help you start going a career that they've navigated themselves. Now, the big thing is obviously value. That's the big elephant in the room, is say, how much should I invest in coaching? And that's a very personal decision. And I always say, what would it have been worth if you solved this problem a year ago? For some people, it would have been they didn't watch 2 men get promoted around them. They wouldn't have got shifted to another division. That's money in your pocket that's gone. So that has a financial value. But there's even more value because not everybody's thinking about money. They could have more influence. So the idea is everybody has to kind of evaluate it themselves and say, if I'd solved this a year ago, where would I be today? What would it be like? And is it worth that investment? And it's a big test. If the answer is no, obviously, then the price value does not work for you. But I can tell you the people that are willing to invest in themselves, because that's what it is. Um, I have a client right now who's been a mother of two. She takes care of the CEO in her organization, chief of staff. She takes care of her husband. He's got his own business. She balances everything. She does all this stuff. And it's like, invest in yourself. This is for you now. Let's go. And she's so enthusiastic to go because she is putting her money and time into her self development, and it's a blast. So those are reasons I think people don't do it. I mean, I'd be happy to hear from anybody and say, why don't you do it, or what questions you have about it. But I can't say that, I can't tell you how much power there is in getting an advocate, somebody on your side who can help guide you through some very tough situations. It could make the difference in your life in terms of so many ways besides money, impact, even work-life balance.
Enormously. I mean, you can't, to me, I can't put a price tag on my peace. I mean, really, right? What quality of life are we living with our job, our, our family, our all of our commitments? And it's interesting to me to that point. I mean, typically because we're talking to people that are in, in business, so they've probably gone and gotten some kind of a degree somewhere. And they probably somebody paid for that degree, right? There was an investment made to have that level of knowledge to then go do the thing. And so it's almost to me as thinking about that as an adult, right? Like the investment in yourself and your development and your quote education doesn't have to end, and it shouldn't end if you want to continue to propel yourself forward, because I think that's why we stay stuck and we tell ourselves all these reasons why blah 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 we can't do this or we can't do that, but we actually can, and we just oftentimes need to get help to do it.
Geez, well said, Jessica. I need you to be around me all the time because that's exactly right. Uh, your comparison to a college education is fantastic because uh, vacations or education, do we get the value from that, or why do we do it? And there's kind of this vague belief that if I do this, then good things are going to happen. Or if I go on vacation, I'm going to feel much better and relax, and I'm going to be enjoying life. Well, the same thing with the coach. It's not always, do I get a financial remuneration for this investment? But it brings you peace to know you're now not having to find every turn and every twist in your life and in your career to find the right answer. There's sometimes you can get a straight line. You can get help on taking that straight line path and shortening the time it takes to get there significantly. So I love what you said.
And so you do have a book.
I do.
And so for people that are interested, getting the book, connecting with you, learning more, what are all the ways people can connect with you?
That's what it looks like. Um, the better way to win, and it's about the story at Barclays. People listening out there, if you're saying, can you turn a culture around? Can you change a culture? It's got everything in there about the experience and every metric as we measured all aspects of the balanced scorecard. So that's what that book is about. It's about leadership, really. Culture is all about leadership. So can leaders create a feeling? It's in the book. The answer is yes. You can buy it anywhere books are sold, actually, but Amazon. I don't have an audio version of it, but I've got a paperback and I have a hardcover. On my website, thebetterwaytowin.com. If you go to the website, you can get an autographed copy of the book from me. And so I'll be happy to send that to you. So that's about leadership. My next book, which is going to come way sooner than I think, is a lot about this personal development, because the same framework that changed a company of 30,000 is the same framework that can help one person change. And so that's what I love to talk about, which is what this podcast has been about.
I love it. Absolutely. So, and then in closing, because we talked about a lot of things today. And so, if you were to boil this down to, one takeaway message from somebody, one takeaway thing for them to really think about or think about taking action on, what would be that closing message you would want to give to people?
The world reflects what you project. In our society, we worship the brain. We've forgotten about the creative center, the source of our energy. The world reflects what we project. Change your projection from here. Don't think about it. Change it from here. You'll change the reflection. Change reflection, you change your life. That's the key message. And there's a whole bunch of information on how to do that, because how to do it's a big thing. It's a life's work. But that's the most simple way of saying it. The world reflects what you project. Change your projection, change your life.
Thanks for being here, Mike. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jessica. Thanks for all the good questions.
And to all of you watching, listening, if you made it this far, this probably had an impact on you, and the greatest gift you can give someone else is to share this episode with them that you think can make a difference in their life and get them to think differently or help propel them toward their next thing and their next piece of transformation in their own lives. And so thank you so much for being here, listeners, viewers, and I do have ways to connect with Mike and his book in the show notes, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for listening to The Possibility Perspective on Transformation Talk Radio. For more information about the show, you can subscribe to the podcast. Visit thepossibilityperspective.com.